Welcome to the podcast. This is a big reptile talk. I'm Derek, and we got none other than Mr. Ronnie himself from Cold Blood Creations. How you doing today, sir?
Man, doing good. Good morning. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Excited to do this podcast, man. I've been wanting to get you on for a while. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Just wanted to, kind of get you on here, talk to you about your channel, man. And I know we talked about it backstage, but we got to do it for the podcast too. What made you start your channel?
Well, it was either that or I had to get a real job. And, and no, actually, I've been breeding reptiles since I was probably 14, 15 years old. And so I've done this kind of, behind the scenes, quietly, for many, many years. Pretty much I've focused on venomous reptiles for a long time. And I had two daughters, and my two daughters always wanted to come out to the shop. They always wanted to go hang out with dad. And the thought of them being with me with so many venomous reptiles, even if I had to go to the bathroom for just a minute or two, I was always terrified. What if they open a cage? What if something would escape and I didn't know it? And so to be honest with you, I transformed when I saw my daughters having an interest. I transformed away from a lot of the venomous reptiles to more of the pet trade type animals, which we were already breeding bearded dragons and colubrids and Burmese pythons and things like that too. But I just made my wife a very happy lady and got out of that. My daughters then decided they wanted to come and work with me. Since I wasn't working with venomous reptiles, my wife was fully supportive of that. And it was actually their idea to do the YouTube channel. I'm not a very tech savvy guy. All of the filming, the editing, and everything is done by one of my daughters who is seldom ever on camera. Her name is Aubrey. She's my oldest daughter, and she does all the special effects, the editing, all that stuff. And then her younger sister Anna is the one that's usually on camera with me. Both of those girls are great, even behind the scenes, very, very hardworking. And I'm very proud of them. But it was actually their idea to do all the social media stuff.
Right. Now, funny you say that about venomous reptiles, man. I'm so excited. I'm getting ready to get my first venomous snake on Wednesday.
I got you. What kind are you getting?
I'm getting a copperhead.
Copperhead. I got you. That's a highly recommended snake. A lot of people recommend that for your first venomous snake. Personally, I recommend the close cousin, the cottonmouth, because over the years I've experienced copperheads will oftentimes strike out and bite you a little quicker than a cottonmouth will. Cottonmouth, once they acclimate to captivity, they're very, very docile. They're a very gentle animal. They're not quite as copperheads are a little more nervous in my experience, but beautiful, beautiful snakes nonetheless. Right. And if you mess up, it's usually not life threatening. So
right.
Let's hope you don't mess up. But I worked with venomous snakes for almost 30 years, and I have never been envenomated. And I'll tell you just a tip that someone gave me a long, long time ago, and I followed this advice, and it's been very good for me. But an older gentleman by the name of Delton Hilliard, and some of the guys that's been around for a few years like I have will remember Delton Hilliard. But he told me one time, he said, never use your hands to do anything that they make a tool for.
Right.
And, and that's, if you've ever heard stories about how some of these guys get bit, the stories usually always begin with, well, I was reaching into the cage and then you can fill in the blank from there. So Delton gave me some really good advice. I followed that. And like I said, 25 years without being envenomated is pretty good for handling hots.
Right. Now, what was your first reptile that just got this all kick-started off for you? The animal that you was like, you know what? I love animals. This is what I want to do.
You know, I tell this to people and they think I'm lying, but it's the truth. I was that kid that was terrified of snakes. I mean, as a child, I was absolutely terrified. Now, I grew up in the 70s with Wild Kingdom on television. And some of the guys out here that are older as I am, and they remember that show, you know, this little old man used to wrangle all kind of snakes, anacondas and all. And I was fascinated by that, but I was terrified of snakes in so much that if I was sitting at my supper table eating a meal and a snake came on TV, I'd have a panic attack. I had that much of a phobia. And I was bound and determined that one day I'm going to overcome that. And I got a book in the library at school when I was a young kid. And I don't remember who wrote it, but it was simply called Snakes. And I just remember opening this book up and looking at it. And I mean, I was so scared. Even the pictures on the pages somewhat frightened me, you know. But I was determined I was going to get over that. And so slowly over the years, I would go out. We lived in an area of town that was kind of, there was a lot of woods that bordered us. So we would go out in the woods. And I think the first snake that I ever found, which actually later on I found out wasn't a snake at all, it was a glass lizard. And I caught that thing and kept it in a 10-gallon aquarium for a while on my mother's back porch. I thought it was a snake. Like I say, later on, I realized it was actually a lizard. But the first snake that I ever personally went and bought and said, I'm going to keep this as a pet was a Colombian boa constrictor. And
Nice.
Second snake was actually a Burmese python. And then I got fascinated with the big snakes, and I kept Burmese retics back when, you know, all the retics were very angry imports that you couldn't hold. You know, they were kind of a display animal only back in the early 80s. But Burmese, boas, retics, that's where I got my start. Probably didn't get into colubrids until I had been working with pythons for probably about 10 years before I ever got my first colubrid.
Right. Well, I love that answer. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We appreciate you being here. Now, from barely having any snakes, talk to me about where you are right now. How does your personal collection look? You know, about how many animals, and you know, what's kind of some of the stuff you got right now?
Well, right now the collection is varying every single day. I mean, to be honest with you, because I mean it's that time of year, and I don't know if your camera's picking up on this. Maybe I can get it up here where you can see.
Oh yeah, I can see. Hold on, I can show you.
But let me turn it around this way. Maybe this will be better here. We've got some eggs hatching out every single day. But you know, I certainly have some favorite animals. I still love the Burmese pythons. It's you know, if you look at our banner, the Cold Blood Creations banner, we have the Burmese is featured twice on that banner because it is one of my favorite snakes. You know, I really like there's so many things, and my interests are still evolving. Like in the last 5 years, I've got into an animal that I never had an interest in up until recently, and that being tortoises and turtles. You know, I was a snake and lizard guy. I like monitor lizards. I like tegus. I like snakes. But my wife's not really a big reptile fan. And she and I have been married 20. In fact, we just celebrated our 21st anniversary about 2 days ago. And my wife was never a reptile person. She wasn't into snakes and all that. But my wife really liked tortoises. And so I decided I was going to get some tortoises that would pique her interest. And so I went out like guys do, and I bought 13 of them. And I like them. You know, I enjoy them. We let them outside. We live in an area where we can let them outside every day. They graze on grass. We have a garden, and, you know, we feed them all natural produce and all. And I've actually gotten where tortoises are one of my favorite reptiles right now.
Okay. Now, the next thing that I want to ask is, how does it feel to be crushing it on YouTube like you are? and I'm gonna give you your stats. Like I'm act like I'm an announcer and you're an NBA player. Let me give you your stats. 55,000 subscribers on YouTube and over 2.7 million views. And I'm gonna tell you something. My YouTube podcast I just started. I think I'm about to crush, almost hit 125,000 views, which is good because I just started. That's like a small city, but I couldn't imagine 2.7 million views. How does that make you feel to be crushing it like that?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm very shocked. We talked about this earlier. I can't even imagine. I'm a football fan, so I'm thinking 50,000 people in the stands of a college football game. That's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm shocked that there are that many people out there that actually like and support what we do. But I think there's a couple reasons for that. And number one, we've strived very hard to create a YouTube channel that an entire family could enjoy together. Because so many things that we go on YouTube, like I'll watch videos sometimes and I think there ain't no way I'm gonna let my 5-year-old son sit down here with me and watch this video. And some of the content's very good, but it's not good if you have children. You don't want your children. An example I'll give you is the early years with snake bites with Brian Barczyk. I love those videos. Chewy was one of the funniest guys in the reptile community, and I love those. But I had to be careful about some of those videos, because, like I say again, having young children, and Brian Barczyk and I talked one time at over the internet, and I told Brian, I said, Brian, you have got a great channel, and I told him, I said, I think this was back when snake bites had. Oh gosh, I don't know. It probably was less than 100,000 or maybe 200,000 subscribers. And I told him, I said, you have a great channel. You have, very good thing going here. But if you would clean the channel up, I believe your channel would get over 1 million subscribers. I believe more families would enjoy what you're doing together. And I think that thing would explode. And if you've noticed over the last few years, Barczyk has really, it's a very good channel. It's a very clean channel. And you look at what's happened. I think now he's over 2 million subscribers. So I think in not only in the reptile community, but in the entertainment community in general, people are starving for entertainment that they don't feel bad about allowing any age group to come online and watch together. And especially families with young children. So that's something we've always strived to do. I think that may have something to do with the popularity. At least I hope so. But I'll be honest with you, I'm still shocked. I remember one of the first video, I think the only video we've ever done, it actually got 1 million views. And I started looking at the AdSense account, and I thought, man, you can actually make money doing this. And I told my girls, I said, this is a good idea. I'm glad I listened to you guys because it certainly helped us out,
Right. Well, yeah, YouTube, you can definitely make money. That's what I'm working towards. I can't wait to become monetized, me being a smaller YouTuber. Now, with your collection, talk to me about, what's one of the worst bites you ever took from something in your collection?
Oh, well, the absolute worst bite I ever took was back in around 1991 or 92. I was actually working with Burmese, and this was back when, if you remember, the albino Burmese had just came out back around that time. And Bob Clark had some albinos, and I purchased a male from him and raised it up, got it up to adult breeding size. I had a normal female that was slightly unpredictable. And by that, I mean, she would bite me about every 3 years. When she was a hatchling, she bit me. Then when she got up to about 5 foot, she bit me again. She got up to about 8 or 9 foot. She bit me again. Well, now this girl has gotten up. She's 14, 15 feet and very thick and powerful. And it was during the breeding season. I was actually in my shop alone. There was nobody there. And I was getting ready to introduce this albino male into the female's cage for the very first time. And I had a knock at my door, and this guy knocked on the door, and he was a buddy of mine. And he came in, and he was actually into reptiles. He was into venomous reptiles, but he was scared to death of the big snakes. He didn't like pythons. And I used to always ask him, why do you work with venomous snakes, but you're scared of pythons? And little was I to know that day I was going to get a demonstration of why he was afraid of them. But he knocked on my door, and I yelled for him to come in. Well, in the meantime, I took this male out, and I opened the cage door where my female was, and I began to put this male into the cage with a female. And if you've bred Burmese pythons, you know during that breeding season, you're trying to feed these females. You're putting a lot of weight on them, trying to get their body mass up for this massive clutch of eggs that Burmese lay. And so they're used to getting fed a lot when that cage door is open. And my buddy spoke to me right as he walked in the door. He's like, "Hey, Ronnie, how you doing?" And I turned for just a brief second and said, "Hey, come on in." And as I turned my head for just a second to acknowledge him, I felt her grab me by the forearm. And before I realized it, she had a coil around my forearm and was beginning to coil around my shoulders. And I realized instantaneously that these are incredibly powerful animals. And it was a full-on feeding response. I mean, it wasn't a defensive bite, where they bite you really quick and then they let go. Feeding response bite, they actually lock the teeth in, and then they follow it up with constriction. And so that's probably the worst bite. Now, I bled like crazy. I could not believe how much blood you can actually lose from a snake bite. But, all in all, when it was over, there was hardly any signs of the fact that I got bit. I mean, I was looking to see pieces of flesh missing. But when it was all over with, there was just, the little pinprick type things. But I'll say that was probably the worst bite as far as everything that went on with it. The feeling of actually being constricted. And back then people didn't know a lot about Burmese. We didn't know the little trick about the alcohol or the mouthwash. So the way we ended up getting her off of me was, luckily there was a shower right next to the room I was in. And me and this python got in the shower together, turned the hot water on, and I stood under the shower with her still attached to me, wrapped around me, until the water got so hot that, I knew eventually me or her one was going to give up. And finally, when the water got hot enough, she turned me loose, and I was able to get away from her. And, but that's probably been the worst bite. Now, I get bit every day by king snakes, and that kind of goes without saying because I work with so many snakes. Every time I stick my hand in with a king snake and they smell that smell on my hands, I get bit probably more than, we have a saying, we get bit more than a Reese cup at a daycare center. And that's very true, but that's probably the worst bite I ever got was from that big berm.
Right. I think the worst bite I ever took was probably from my carpet python. They got some big teeth.
I had the opportunity to babysit one of those. I had a friend of mine whose son went to college, and he had a couple of them. And I'd never worked with the species, and he asked me if I would babysit them for the first year while his son was getting his basics done in college. And I almost took a bite by one of them right to the face. I opened the cage up. And, I had done it dozens of times, and they never seemed to be aggressive. But this one particular time, I opened the cage up, and, it lunged right here. And those guys have an incredible striking range, too.
Right.
They kind of remind me of the, the emerald tree boas. Those things can strike. It seems like they can strike the length of their body and very, very quickly. But
right.
I think probably the worst snake that I'm eventually going to get bit by, and I say eventually because they try awfully hard all the time, is the blood pythons.
Oh yeah, they got a nasty little attitude.
And they're fast. I have never seen a non-venomous snake that can. They remind me of the gaboon viper.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean? They just lay there. They don't. They look like they couldn't move if they were on fire. But then when they strike, just like the gaboon, they look like, they're just big, sluggish, can't possibly move. But when they do decide to move, it's like lightning. It's extremely fast. And the blood pythons are that way very much. They're incredibly quick. And I've got two here that, I think they hate me. and they want to bite me every chance they get.
Right. They got a nasty little attitude, man. What do you think what's your favorite snake? And I mean non-venomous and venomous.
Oh man. I've been asked that before, and I don't know, because I've often thought about that. A lot of breeders out there specialize in one thing. You have the guys that specialize in nothing but ball pythons, and some specialize in nothing. And I've often thought, if I had to do that, if I was forced to do that, what would I choose? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I really don't know, because there's so many things that I like about each individual species. The sheer size and the power of the Burmese pythons I like, but I don't want to handle Burmese pythons every day. And these guys are big and they're heavy. I'm 50 years old this year, so that's not something I want to do every day. I like bull snakes. I really enjoy bull snakes. But by and large, bull snakes, they're a pain in the butt. I mean, they really are. Those guys, they're a very high-strung animal, as a lot of the Pituophis, the pines, the gophers, they have a little bit of an attitude. I have a couple that are puppy dog tamed, but by and large, they, they're like the blood pythons. They'll reach out and grab you.
Right.
I love milk snakes. I love Honduran milk snakes. I think are one of the most beautiful color and pattern morphs. And the albinos in the milk snakes, to me, are the prettiest albinos in any species. They retain their colors throughout their entire life. Whereas a lot of like an albino ball python, for example, they're beautiful when they're born, but then it washes out as they mature. The albino Honduran milk snakes are just incredible throughout their entire life. So it would really be tough for me to say one kind of snake that I'd want to work with, but I would say as I get older, it would probably lend itself towards the king snakes and milk snakes, simply because, as I age, handling things like Burmese is going to become more and more difficult.
Right. I love my king snake. Now, with you being in the reptile hobby, I kind of want to know, do you get a chance to go herping? And if so, what are some of your favorite finds?
Used to, and I say this used to, I used to snake hunt with a guy that some of you might want to look this guy up on, you can look him up on Facebook or whatnot. His name was Gordon Cates. Gordon was one of the best snake hunters that I've ever met in my life. I mean, he's an old school guy. I think Gordon's maybe in his late 60s now. Some people remember him. He's a guy that went on Guinness Book of World Records years ago and kissed the king cobra on top of the head and broke the Guinness Book of World Records. I was actually roommates with that guy for a short period of time, and he was been a friend of mine. He was very influential, taught me a lot of things when I was younger. But he was an incredibly good snake hunter. I mean, this guy could find snakes. We would go to a spot to field herp, and I would go out and hunt and look around everywhere. And he would say to me, "Okay, did you check everything?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And he'd say, "Wait here, I'll be right back." And he would go out and come back from the same places I had just gone, and he'd have a snake in each hand. And it was amazing at his knowledge of where to look and where to find. And I loved going out field herping. The problem now in my part of the country is that everybody has now put up, people don't trust each other no more. So everywhere you go out to hunt snakes, there's these signs that say no trespassing, private property, violators will be prosecuted. And I've never been arrested, but I have been detained, shall we say, so many times by police that say, what are you doing? We still on? Okay, we
Yeah,
went
we're
out.
here. I'm listening to you.
Okay. My screen went blank for a minute, so I wasn't sure we were still on. But I've been detained by the police several times, and they usually want to know, what you're doing. I've never been arrested. Normally, when I tell them what I'm doing, then the conversation is like, really? And but it's harder to go out and field herp because of all of the no trespassing signs. And then a couple years ago, I took my two daughters and we went out herping, and we were walking across an area, and there was an old barn, had a tin roof, and as you know, those areas are usually pretty good for finding snakes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we walked into this area, and as soon as we rounded the barn, I saw a table set up with a propane cooker and about 100 boxes of Sudafed sitting on the ground around it. And as soon as I saw that, I told my girls, I said, let's go, get back to the truck. Because, I had a pretty good idea of what that was. And I said, I certainly don't want to be out here and get caught around somebody's meth lab, So
That's a crazy story.
Yeah, right. It is. And the thing about it, it gets crazier because the land was actually owned by a pastor in of our area. He was a pastor of a church, but he didn't know about this meth lab. He was an elderly gentleman, and he don't walk out on his property that much. Someone had gone out there unbeknownst to him and set up a meth lab, and he didn't even know about it until we found it. But that's the kind of things that you got to be careful of, especially here in southern Georgia where I'm at. Is you walk up on some things sometime that you might not want to walk up on, but I still do enjoy field herping. Probably the safest way we do it now is to go out road cruising on late in the afternoon and find snakes crossing the road. I still enjoy doing that. My daughter Anna, the one that's on the videos with me, she does a lot of photography. Most of the pictures that we put on our stuff, she actually shoots. And here in Georgia, we're not allowed to keep any native snakes that are non-venomous, like the corn snake or the eastern king. So we can't catch those and keep them like you can down in Florida. But we are allowed to photograph them, and so we go out field herping sometime, and she takes some pretty good photographs of of those animals. But as far as catching them and actually keeping them, we're not allowed to keep anything indigenous to the state of Georgia.
That's insane. I think one of my other friends told me that. That's crazy. You're not able to keep corn snakes of all snakes.
And here's the thing. A lot of people don't understand, and I actually have some friends that work in the fishing game here in Georgia, and we've talked about that. And I'll tell you this: people get mad at the fishing game. They get mad at the DNR guys because they feel like you do. That's a crazy law, and this, that, and the other. But the DNR don't write those laws. Politicians write those laws. The DNR, unfortunately, they have to be the bad guys and enforce them. But a lot of your DNR guys don't agree with that law either. They're trying to protect Georgia's native resources. That's what they're trying to do.
Right.
And people get confused because there's no protection for rattlesnakes, cottonmouths, copperheads, coral snakes, any of that in Georgia. And people assume, they say, well, it's kind of stupid in Georgia that you're allowed to keep a rattlesnake as a pet, but you're not allowed to keep a corn snake as a pet. But when those laws were written, the idea of keeping snakes as pets didn't exist. When those laws were written, the idea behind the laws was that we don't want you to kill a snake that's beneficial to the environment, but they didn't want to criminalize a man who killed a rattlesnake to protect his homestead.
Right.
And so that's why the laws are written the way they are. To be honest with you, I wish our state would adopt some of the laws. Some of the other states have said You can keep it if it's an albino, if it's anetheristic, if it's a snow, if it's any color or pattern morph that wouldn't occur naturally in the wild. You can keep it and breed it in captivity, but you can't keep the normal wild caught because they want to know that it wasn't caught out of the wild. I wish Georgia would do that. Some of the guys at the Georgia DNR have tried to pass that or tried to get that passed, but once again, they have to get a politician to sign off on it.
Right. And even these laws, man, they crazy. And even still, I want to rewind and go back. Just man, you found a meth lab, and then like you said, these laws are crazy. Sorry,
Well,
that's my son.
The laws are crazy, and like I live from where I'm at in Georgia, I can spit to Florida, and I'm that close to the Florida line. So I know a lot of herpers down in Florida, and they're real upset right now with like the FWC down there, outlawing the tegus and the iguanas and all that stuff. And again, they get angry with the Fish and Game because the Fish and Game they have to enforce these laws. But it's lawmakers, it's politicians. Many of these politicians have animal rights activists in their back pocket. These groups like the HSUS, PETA, and they're putting money into politicians' pockets and saying, hey, look, pass these laws that fit our agenda. And, politicians they're politicians, and they're going to, they're going to, a lot of them are for sale. And so they take this money from these animal rights activists, they pass these laws, and then the Fish and Game are, they have to enforce them. I think it's counterproductive. Like what here down in Florida when they ban these tegus. Now, I walked around the reptile shows, and you overhear conversations, and I hear people say things like, well, I've got 200 tegus that Fish and Game don't even know about, and if they ban them, I'm going to release them into the wild. And they do that because they feel like this is the only thing I can do to fight back, or they feel like, imagine this. Imagine you're a reptile breeder in Florida. Your whole livelihood is surrounded by breeding tegus. All of a sudden, just that quick, the whole Fish and Game come in and say, you know what? The way you put food on your family's table, we're going to remove it. That's personal, because now you're attacking my family and the way I put food on my table. And so these guys are angry, and rightly so. I completely understand how they feel. And so they've adopted this philosophy. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them have adopted the philosophy, well, we'll just release it into the wild, and we'll create the problem, we'll further the problem that they're trying to stop. And it's, I think it's going to be counterproductive if they follow through with this. I know USARC now has a lawsuit against the FWC down there. And hopefully they'll win it. I'm not against a permitting system. I'm not against, the state being able to come in and say, we want to inspect your facility, make sure the animals are not being neglected, make sure they're cared for. And I'm all for that. We get inspected here in Georgia. Now, we're not under Fish and Game here in Georgia. I'm actually under the Department of Agriculture. But, we welcome the inspectors when they come here. I don't view those guys as my enemy. They're actually very beneficial to me because, if somebody comes in or somebody says, well, I want to buy a bearded dragon, for example, and they say, but, I want to buy it from a trusted source, I can say, hey, you know what? I'll give you a copy of my last inspection. I'll let you see what the state of Georgia inspector said about our facility. And if this government agency's come in and said, you know what, we don't see any room for improvement, then you can trust that, these guys are probably keeping things very, very clean.
You get a good animal. Yeah.
So I look at it as that works to our advantage. Years ago, now, when I was younger, I didn't have this attitude. Obviously, when I was younger, I felt like it was government intrusion and they shouldn't have that right. But as I got older and started seeing, if you don't believe in government inspections, you need to get out and see the way some people keep reptiles.
Right.
Because I've been in homes where people would keep cobras in Rubbermaid boxes with no lock, no lid, just the little snap lids on the ends of them. And I'm thinking, I don't want this guy living next door to me. I want some government agency to come in and say, this ain't going to work. You can't keep cobras like this. They're going to escape. Right. So, I don't have a problem with the permitting system, but the knee-jerk reaction to outright ban a reptile because, again, it's discriminatory. They're not banning cats, and cats do far, far more damage to the natural environment.
I just said that. I was like, you could get bit by a pit bull, and they might put that one pit bull down, but they're never going to say you can never have a dog again. But one person lets a snake loose, and they'll punish a whole state. I just said that probably 2 nights ago.
Yeah, it's going on up in North Carolina right now.
Right.
I personally haven't read it. I have a friend of mine. He calls me oftentimes, and he'll tell me what's going on. But a guy had I want to say maybe it was a cobra or something that escaped.
Yeah, spitting cobra.
We were nervous right here in my hometown of Valdosta. A couple years ago, we had a guy. This made national news. We had a guy that released a bunch of ball pythons into a community. He was. I don't know. He was under investigation by U.S. Fish and Wildlife or something. I don't know the whole story, but he released a bunch of pythons in the community, and it, national news. I had people calling me from far away saying, "Hey, do you know anything? Is that you? Are they looking for you?" And I said, "No, it's not me, but I got a feeling I know who it probably is." Because the guy just moved to Valdosta, Georgia, because he was in so much trouble in Florida. He had to get out of Florida, so he came here and basically, did some of the same stuff here. But, we were thinking for a while, they're going to take that story and they're going to take, and try to enact more laws. So a lot of the criticism that we get in the reptile community, sadly, we bring on ourselves. A lot of that, we've bought and paid for a lot of that criticism within the community. But like I said, again, I think sometimes the government's overreaching with the outright bans, because here's the thing: people are not going to stop keeping what they want to keep.
Right.
They're going to keep what they want. And here's the problem with that. Let's take North Carolina, for example. North Carolina is going to come in. They're going to say, no more exotic venomous snakes. Do you know how many people are going to stop keeping exotic venomous snakes that want to keep exotic venomous? None of them.
Right, none of them. If I want to keep them, I'm going to keep them.
Now what they're going to do is they're going to keep them illegally. There's going to be no one that knows they keep them. So number one, you're putting the keeper in danger, because now he can't even go to the hospital without fear of. The other thing is, nobody in his neighborhood is going to know he keeps venomous snakes. So if one escapes, they're not going to know that the snake crawling across my backyard is not a rat snake. It may be a cobra. The government's not going to know he's got these animals. So they're actually going to make the situation worse, because, once again, people are going to do what they want to do. We know how well it worked when the government tried to ban alcohol.
Right.
And marijuana. We see how well that worked. So people are going to do what they want to do. By banning it, they're just going to create a very lucrative black market, and they're going to create a situation that's going to get out of hand even more so.
Right. Now, I wanted to also kind of talk to you about your breeding, man. So, do you breed stuff full time? And if so, where can we get some animals from you? Do you, sell through word of mouth? Do you prefer to use Morph Market? And talk to me about some of the stuff that you're breeding.
We do a lot with bull snakes. We breed bull snakes. I mean, right now we've got king snakes, milk snakes, bull snakes hatching out. Now we're running late this year because here in Georgia we had a cold snap. Normally we would bring our colubrids out of hibernation around March. We didn't bring them out till about April this year because March was pretty cold this year here. So we let our animals hibernate for an extra month. As far as where we actually buy them, we have a website we just started last year. And our website is www.coldbloodcreations.online. Excuse me. We do put several of our animals on there. Now, right now, we don't have a ton of stuff for sale, because what we do is when we have an animal that hatches out, it gets assigned a cage, it gets assigned a number, and then we begin to keep feeding records on that animal. The hobby's changed over the years, in that a vast number of people want animals that are already eating on frozen thawed. So we make sure that we get an animal consistently feeding on frozen thawed rodents before we even put it up for sale. So let's say, for example, we feed a baby king snake one time and it doesn't feed. Second time, frozen thawed, it doesn't feed. By the third time, if it doesn't feed on frozen thaw, we're going to go ahead and feed it live. We're not going to let it starve to death, but we're consistently working towards frozen thaw with each of those animals. Every time they feed, we keep a record of what they ate. Only until they've eaten approximately 5 times on frozen thawed, we feel like there's been a consistency that we can say this animal is feeding on frozen thawed. Then it goes up for sale. We put them on our website. We do Morph Market, and Morph Market for colubrid breeders was actually free up until this month. This month, Morph Market now has started charging. So we've yet to get an account on there. We probably will at some point. Haven't done that yet. I think we've got 2 or 3 animals on Morph Market, but and prior to that, we did a lot of reptile shows in our area. And we did a lot of the Repticon shows. They got we're actually doing a show here in Valdosta a week from today. It's going to be the first reptile show we've done in over a year. We didn't do shows all during the shutdown. And to be honest with you, I haven't got back. I know the shows are opening up now. Right now, the Atlanta Repticon's going on today. And that actually is one of my favorite reptile shows that we ever did, was the Atlanta Repticon. And I've got a lot of friends up in the Atlanta area in the reptile community, and I miss doing that show. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of reptile shows, simply because I'm a family guy and I like my weekends. You know, I like to be able to do things on the weekend. When you're a full-time reptile breeder, you work Monday through usually Friday with animals, and then if you do a show, you work Saturday and Sunday, and then you don't get a day off Monday. It starts all over again. So it's pretty easy to get exhausted. It's pretty easy to get burnt out doing shows week after week after week. There's a lot of guys out there that do it, but there's, not a lot of guys at my age that do it every weekend.
Right.
I do like the shows. I have a love-hate relationship with the shows. I love being at the shows. I love meeting the people while I'm at the show, but the preparation to go to the show and all the work that's involved getting back and getting caught up, that's the part I actually hate about doing shows.
Right. Well, I got to put you in the hot seat, man. I got to ask you a hot seat question. With you being a reptile breeder, and you got to pick one, who would you say is one of your favorite reptile breeders? Whether it be whether it be Ozzy Boyd's, Justin Kabelka, Gavin from Balls to You, just who right now is your favorite reptile breeder?
Reptile breeder, man. I'll have to be honest with you. If I told you my favorite reptile breeder, you probably would have never heard of him. Because
who is it?
There's so many people that actually do things that they're not on social media. They're private breeders that do things, at home, on their own. When you ask me about ball python breeders, I have no idea what you're talking about, because that is a species of animal that I've never worked with ball pythons. For the most part, I have had them. I have bred them. They've never been a big interest of mine. So I'm not really aware of, I probably couldn't identify and tell you more than 3 morphs of ball pythons. I walk through a show and I see 100 different ball pythons and I'm thinking they all look normal to me. I don't know a lot about ball pythons, so that's probably something. The guy you were talking about from Always Evolving Pythons, I've watched some of his videos, and I really like his YouTube channel. He seems like a great guy. I tell you, probably the person that I have the most respect for in the reptile community as far as a breeder of snakes would probably be the young lady, the Reptile Discovery. Is it Snake Discovery?
Snake Discovery. Yep.
Snake Discovery. What's her name? And I'm sorry, I sound
Emily.
ignorant. I tell you, I don't spend a lot of time on
fine.
YouTube.
You're fine. Her name's Emily.
Emily. She's the young lady. She wears the glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have watched some of her channel, and I really enjoy her channel. I mean, she's very classy. She does a great job. You can obviously tell she cares a lot about her animals. I like her. Another guy that I really like is the guy down the Camp Kennan.
Yeah, I've watched.
The guy has an amazing place. I love what he's doing down there. The naturalistic cages that he does. He keeps a lot of his animals outdoors. I like that. So is that close enough to answering your question? I really respect those two people. Far as breeders go, man, I really don't know. I really don't know. There's a guy, like I said, you probably never heard of him, but there's a guy that I know by the name of Dennis Bartholomew, and he's about 70 years old. He's been breeding reptiles for many, many years. Very, very nice guy. Breeds in his home. Like I say, he's not a big name guy. Breeds some really good animals, and just just a genuinely nice guy. I really respect him a lot. I've done a lot of business with him. I've been to his home many times. Just a genuinely nice guy, and I like him. I don't know if you know this guy or not, but I live in Valdosta, Georgia. So I grew up under the influence of Bernard Bechtel. Does that name ring a bell to you?
I've heard that name before.
Okay. Bernard Bechtel was the very first reptile breeder to ever produce an albino corn snake in captivity. He was the first guy to ever produce a snow corn in captivity. And he was actually one of the guys that I worked, even from a child. He wrote he wrote the book on captive breeding genetic morphs. And ironically, he did it with corn snakes right here in Valdosta, Georgia. He's passed away. Bernard Bechtel was an elderly man. I actually speaking of field herping, I got to take him field herping before he died. And he was, when I was a child, Bernard Bechtel was in his 60s when I was a kid. So that tells you how old he was. I actually got to take him out field herping one time, or a couple of times actually, before he died. And he gave me a wall of cages, a bank of cages. If you've ever seen the Corn Snake Manual by Bill and Kathy Love, they wrote a book called the Corn Snake Manual. On the inside of that book, if you open it up, there's a picture of Bernard Bechtel. They give him credit for a lot of the genetic information in that book. And there's a picture of him standing in front of a wall of cages. And before he died, he gave me that wall of cages. Now, I'll tell you this, that guy was breeding these snakes back in like the 60s and 70s. Yeah. When I got those cages from him, there were labels on those cages of animals that Bernard Bechtel was working with back in the late 60s, early 70s. And it blew my mind at the things he was working with, things like scaleless Texas rat snakes. Way back then. Those things are just now becoming known in the hobby. This guy was working on this stuff back in the 70s. And he was doing it very quietly in his home, and probably nobody. I think I talked to Bernard one time. I took him to the Daytona Expo and showed him and said, look what you started. And he didn't even know. He had no clue that the things he was doing had caught on and become this huge industry. because these guys are just doing it in the privacy of their bedroom. Look him up. His name is Bernard Bechtel. And like I said, you may can even find the books that he wrote. But I had the opportunity to know him personally and to be around him. And he probably knew more about scientific things about snakes than he's probably forgot more than I know. But he was very influential in the hobby, even though his name probably doesn't ring a bell to a lot of the guys in the industry today.
Right. I'm gonna have to look that book up and check it out. Before we get out of here, because I normally go about 30 to 45 minutes, I want you to give us some new breeder advice. Somebody that's wanting to get into breeding animals. Give us some tips. What's some good stuff we can know?
Well, probably the biggest mistake I see a lot of new guys get, and I've seen this happen over and over again, and I've advised guys not to do this, is guys they'll watch videos and they'll see things like, let me turn around here, like see this bank of vision cages back here, this wall of cages behind me, and they'll say, in order to breed reptiles, I have to have 100 cages and 100 animals. And most of the time when a guy first starts out, he's going to have a full-time job. Sometimes he may be married, he may have children, and they want to go big right off the bat. I've seen more guys burn out from doing that than anything else. Guy just starts out, he goes out, he buys, a lot of times they'll go into debt. They'll go get a loan. They'll buy 100 snakes. They will raise those snakes up. And, with a full-time job and a family, and they find, man, I don't even have time to keep my cages clean. And they burn out very, very quickly because they find out too that a lot of people got into the hobby because they thought, especially with the ball python craze, it's a easy way to make quick money. But then they got into it and found out that's not true. This is a full-time plus some job. As a reptile breeder, you don't get to go on vacation for long periods of time. I have friends that they'll go on vacation, they'll be gone for a whole week. There's no way my collection could be without me for a week,
Right.
Especially during baby season. So it's something that, number one, you got to be dedicated to it. If you're married, you've got to have a good, supportive spouse. I give you an example. My wife loves to travel. She loves to go to the beach and things like that. But she's been very supportive of me, knowing that I can't be gone for more than a day or two at a time. So she's had to sacrifice some things that she loves in order to support me. So that's very important. You got to have somebody that's going to back you. You got to have a good support system, because it's a full-time job, and it is hard work. And I see a lot of people burn out because they try to go too big too fast. I started off breeding Burmese pythons many, many years ago as a hobby, and I worked my way up. Let your hobby. Another thing that I never did is I never went in debt. I never went out and borrowed money to build a business. I started small. I invested capital that I made from the hobby until eventually that, like right now, if I needed a bank of vision cages, I could go and I could purchase a bank of vision cages. But when I first started out, it was a sacrifice to buy a single 40-gallon aquarium, And so that's the thing. A lot of guys, they go out and they get into this huge amount of debt, buying all these nice cages and things like that. And then they've got to make thousands of dollars a year to pay back those loans. So I tell people, you know what? Be patient. Be patient. Start small. Don't set yourself up for financial ruin. Don't set yourself up to burn out when you realize that you're not going to quit your job and become a millionaire overnight. Most of the guys who, somebody said one time, and this is very true. They said the easiest way to have $1 million as a reptile breeder is to start out with $2 million. That's very true. You start out with $2 million, you may end up with $1 million. But The hobby's been good for us. I've been able to make a living. I've been able to stay home and work, have my family, my children work with me. I've got a little boy that's growing up now, and he's already saying, "Daddy, I want to come to work with you. I want to come to work with you." He's 5 years old. Eventually I think he will, but it's been good. But the advice I'd give people, start out small. Don't get into a lot of debt and work your way up slowly and get good at what you're doing. Don't, because again, the quality of the animal is only going to be as good as the quality of the care. And when you can't devote yourself to good quality animal care because you've got too many animals, then, the quality of the animals is going to suffer. And you know how that goes from there. It just, reputation goes downhill. A lot of guys have done that. So,
Right. Well, I just want to tell you, I appreciate you coming on, giving us some knowledge. I love what you're doing in the hobby. I love your videos. I love your YouTube. Everybody in the chat, thank y'all for being here. This is Cold-Blooded Creations. I got one more question. It's a hot seat question.
okay.
With you,
All right.
with you having so many animals, have you ever lied to your wife about the cost of a snake? Like you wanted a snake and it was 1,000, and you
Have I
told her
ever,
it was 200.
it's funny that you say that. I went to a show and I saw a sign on a guy's table and it said, "For an extra $5, we will print you out a receipt that says what you tell your wife you paid for this animal." They would actually give you a receipt that would show what you lied to your wife about. Have I ever lied to my wife about the price of an animal? You know what? My wife has never questioned me about any of that. Like I said, my wife has been very supportive. When not being a reptile person and not really being that interested in anything, she doesn't really. My wife probably don't even know what I have, to be honest with you. So I've never had to lie to her as far as that goes. Now I'll tell you the things that I've probably kept. If I've ever kept a secret from my wife, it's probably not been in how much money I've spent on an animal. Probably the one animal that my wife is afraid of. She does not like them. She wishes I would get rid of them. Is my Argentine tegus. My wife don't like them. I have some tegus they're wild caught. They're pretty aggressive. I don't tell her how many times I actually get bit by those tegus. That's probably the only secret I keep from her. And of course, she's watching this, so now she knows. But I probably get bit a lot more than I tell her. And she'll say, "What happened to your hand?" I'm like, "Oh, it's just, job hazard." but that's probably it. But no, my wife has been very, very good. And I've been very fortunate to have a wife that's very supportive of what I do. And, so yeah, I don't keep to be. Plus, too, she's my accountant, by the way. She does all my bookkeeping and she does my taxes. She does all of that stuff. And so you can't lie to the person that's paying your bills and keeping your checkbook out,
Man, this was a great interview, man. I appreciate you coming on. Let me pick your brain a little bit. Hopefully, we could do it again in the future. Hopefully, you
Yeah.
do some of these on your channel. I think it'd be dope to see you go out and talk to some people. But this is the podcast, man. This is Big Reptile Talk. We got Cold Blood Creations in here. First off, shout out to everybody in the chat: Kara Shea, Moon Over Miami, Gecko Shot, Iron Dog, My Animal House, DG Reptiles, Prehistoric Companions, Reptile Feedings, Venom Wonderful, Desert Wolf Army, everybody that's in the reptile community that I associate with. I might have missed a few people. Ball Python Love, Kurt Wood, everybody. Go subscribe to them, check them out. This is the coolest podcast. No, I'm just kidding. But thank you for being
You may
here,
not
man.
say
We're gonna go back.
that.
You got to say that. You got to rep your stuff when you're here. I'm gonna take us backstage. Everybody, thanks for watching. Honey, thank you. I love you. My son's right there. I'm coming, son. This is Big Reptile talking. We out of here, man. Don't go on. I'm gonna take us backstage and just
Okay.
thank you again.